Hey, and welcome to the Change Leaders Playbook, bringing you all things delivery and leadership in a podcast. Now, did you know that everything you say or write gives an impression of who you are and why people should associate with you? I explore how you can take control of your own narrative with my special guest, Charlotte Davies, also known as Charlotte the copywriter. Now, Charlotte is an award-winning copywriter, event host, and TEDx speaker. She combines those skills to write engaging copy and content for growing businesses, helping them to stand out from the competition and turn strangers into customers. And it's my pleasure to welcome Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte. Good to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Cliff. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Now, I would really like to start just by understanding more about you, your background, how you got into the line of work that you're in, and what life events may have changed you and got you to really see this as an opportunity to progress and to help others.
Yeah. Wow, Cliff. It feels like sometimes like I've lived 100 years or 100 lifetimes with what's gone on in my life. So going back to the start, I started my career in PR back in 2003. And I was working for PR agencies, working on B2B and B2C campaigns. So I worked for a few different agencies, some for food PR, so cheese brands, Indian food brands. And then I worked for a few years in music PR as well. So I was working on online PR campaigns for record labels like Atlantic, Warner Music, working with pop stars like Jason Derulo on his first album,
Never
Flow
heard of him
Rider.
at all.
No, he was brand new when he came out. I mean, when I first started, Facebook wasn't a thing. MySpace was like going towards the end of its popularity, but it was still a social media platform. Bebo. We were sending out actual CD singles and albums in the post to reviewers as well. But it was great and such great experience. And I was watching people interview stars all of the time. I had time to allocate to different media platforms like BBC, The Sun, NME, MTV, all these different really great journalists. So I learned all about how to ask good questions and how to give good answers as well. And then when I was about 30, I'd been working for another PR agency, and I just thought, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because I burnt out. Agency life is hard work. PR is hard work. And I thought, you know what? I don't know what I want to do next. So as you do, I decided to go to Southeast Asia and think, I'm going to work out what comes next after that. But life often has different expectations to what you put into place in your plans. So I had booked my flights for January 2014 to Thailand in about the September 2013. In the run up to my flights, I started feeling sick. So I had a cough that wouldn't go away. I kept finding it difficult to breathe easily. I got really tired. But going to my GPs down in Bristol, I was given cough medicine, an inhaler at one point. I went to A&E on New Year's Day 2014, and nobody really knew what it was. So I ended up going across to Thailand, and while I was over there, I was hospitalized, and a scan a few weeks in showed that I had a 10 centimeter tumor compressing my airways. So I was flown back to the UK, back to Wolverhampton, and started treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So as you can tell, I'm in this interview right now. The treatment was a huge success, but it was a huge wake-up call that life doesn't last forever. So you've got to make the most of all your opportunities. And I wanted to go back to work when I was recovering. but I didn't want to go back into PR. So I ended up at the box office at Wolverhampton Grand Theatre, which was the perfect job to get back into the swing of things. So I was selling tickets in the evening, doing a few hours a week, working with some really lovely people, got to see a few shows, and I was learning to teach English as a foreign language as well. So after a year, I went to work in Italy for a few weeks and then to Spain for a few months and got some experience teaching out there, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. So I came back to the Grand back in January 2016, and they said, we're looking for somebody to do the PR for the theatre as a business. Would you be interested? So I thought, yeah, you know what? It's stability. I know I like working at the theatre. I know this is something that I could do. And at that point, after a really traumatic few years, I just wanted a bit of stability and be around family and friends again. And I've been in Wolverhampton since then, and was working at the theatre up until the pandemic. And then, as you know, life went a bit crazy. So I took voluntary redundancy during the pandemic. And then I started my copywriting business because at the time I thought I want to do something which I could do anywhere in the world. Or if the world closes down again, then I can do it from home. So I've been doing that since then, working with service providers on their website copy, on their emails and their spoken presentations, speeches, and also organising networking events as well. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, but really happy with where I am right now.
Wow, that's very much a journey, a bit of a whirlwind, actually. I just wonder how these life events have helped you, or even given you a different outlook on life and work, even at all. You mentioned a little bit about life doesn't last forever and grab opportunities. Is there anything else that perhaps that's taught you or is teaching you, the experiences you've had with health and how you've overcome it?
I think when you go through something which is a critical illness, your emotions get stretched to the absolute extremes. So I think it's made me a much more empathetic person. So because I'm able to relate to different life experiences on a much different level than I was before. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit impatient with people, not in like a bad way, but if somebody's saying, oh, I'm too scared to do this, that, and the other, especially when it comes to public speaking, I think it's not going to kill you. There's that thing, people would rather die than do public speaking. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm much happier to do the public speaking, but I think it's just about pushing yourself in a way that's comfortable for you, but stretching yourself as well, because you don't want to look back when you're hopefully old and in your bed thinking, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. I'd rather look back and think, oh, well, I tried it, it didn't work out, but at least I know. Or, oh, I tried that, and because of that, it led on to this, and then it led on to that, and then the other. It's just a starting off point.
One of the things that also was brought to my mind was the fact that perhaps people don't realize as much that public speaking is kind of part and parcel of life these days. Not every single job, but in the working life, and certainly the people that I work with, they have to do presentations and have to even be on video calls like this. It's a form of public speaking, and even capture an audience. It is part and parcel of how we do work these days, and perhaps it's maybe overlooked. So what would you say to somebody that is nervous about these sorts of things and how that might relate to them in terms of their career or just confidence?
It's perfectly fine to be nervous because you are in a vulnerable position. especially if it's a big audience, you're standing in front of people you might not know. It is a position of vulnerability. Especially if you care, then absolutely you might be nervous. But evolutionary from a tribal perspective, it was the leaders of the tribe who would stand up and share information, and that information was often about survival. So automatically, by standing in front of a group and speaking, you're putting yourself in a position of leadership or a position of authority. So you're going to gain credibility for what you say. So absolutely put yourself out there, because you're going to be able to spread your message so much quicker than if it's just one-to-one. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, one of the things that I get asked a lot, or it is told to me a lot, which is, well, I don't have all the answers. I'm not really an expert. I'm only a little bit of an expert in this area. For example, I'm not really a thought leader, or don't really command authority or respect. My take on it really is kind of, nor do I really. I have experience, or my colleagues will have experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have all the answers. We're part of an answer which others may not have access to. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best presentations weave in experience and stories, and they are totally subjective and from your own point of view. And I think everybody relates and has different relationships with different personality types. So if I've been to, Cliff, hundreds of presentations, and I'm sure you have too. Some speakers you vibe with, other people you don't. And I think, well, I've listened to some speakers, and for me, I think, that's not my cup of tea. That's not how I see things. It's an interesting point of view, but it's not for me. But then other people on the road were going, oh my goodness, that's so profound. But then other times I've been in other presentations where I thought, wow, that was great. But someone else said, oh no, that's not for me. That's not how I see it. So I think you can't please everybody in an audience. But I think if you go in with an open mind, share your point of view, share your experiences, then that's going to respond to other people. Some people are going to totally agree with you. Other people, it might bring them more towards your way of thinking. Other people are going to disagree with you or just not be able to see it. But that's perfectly natural. Something else I would say, Cliff, about public speaking is a couple of summers ago I was doing a presentation, and halfway through I felt really ill. And I think it was maybe tail end of COVID something, or I was going to have COVID, something along those lines. And halfway through, I just said, I'm really sorry. I don't feel very well. I don't feel like I'm giving you the best, my best. Do you mind if I just have a glass of water? And everybody was so kind, and nobody said, oh, you're a terrible person. They said, would you like a glass of water? I took off my shoes. I sat down, and then I carried on, and everybody's absolutely fine. Nobody trolled me. Nobody said, I can't believe you did that. You're speaking to humans. I'm a human. I've seen other people have to go off stage before. And everybody was so supportive with them to get them back on stage, and they carried on. And as a result of carrying on, after they'd forgotten their words, they came back and delivered the rest of their presentation. And people went up to them afterwards and said, oh, you did so well, and respected them more for carrying on than if they just quit. So everybody's human. If you forget your words, it really isn't the end of the world.
Yeah, that's very good. And I wondered what type of What type of people do you work with then, in terms of, because in my world, for example, I deal with a lot of department leaders, senior sort of executives, and project people as well. And I think all of those audiences and individuals need to have, including myself, an awareness and some ability to get themselves out there and engage with people, to tell a narrative about how that project's working, or how that program or whatever the initiative is, problems that are occurring, and share some of their own experiences to help other people as well. I really think that's a valuable attribute to have. Whether it speaks to everybody or not, it doesn't really matter, because it's about sharing your own knowledge. How does that relate to the people that you speak to and work with?
Yeah, so I've worked with people who run their own businesses, but I run networking skills workshop, which helps people to develop a 6-second pitch. So that can be every level of the audience. The last workshop I did, it had a couple of younger solicitors who were really new in their career. One was an apprentice. So I think every level of the organisation, it really pays to have these skills. Even at school, I was doing public speaking competitions. When I was teaching English, I was teaching some young people, 8-year-olds through to teenagers to adults, and teaching them how to do presentations in English when Spanish was their first language, which is even harder. I've studied French at university, and to be able to speak in do a presentation in another language, it's tough, but it certainly makes a presentation in your first language a lot easier. So I think any age, any level, to be able to speak confidently in public and share your stories, it helps people have more confidence in you and respect you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So what about copywriting? How important is it for the people in team roles, where they're supporting team members or having to manage conversations and give updates and all the rest of it? I think it's quite a fine art. I'd be really interested to know about your experiences and how you help people, and what you'd give is in terms of guidance for people that are in sort of my type of role.
Yeah, so when you think about copywriting and the difference between copy and content, it's more that copywriting is more traditionally, it's salesmanship in print, but it's any kind of writing or even spoken material that drives an action. So if you want to persuade somebody of anything, then copywriting is a way to do it. And I think that is useful in, again, any level of the organization. Because if you see, I go on a lot of different websites through my job. I analyze a lot of different types of writing. And a lot of it is, we do this, we do that, but without any context. And it's just empty, and it doesn't make me feel anything. I think, okay, well, how does that relate to me? And as humans, we're selfish. It's all about our own survival, or our own lives. How does this relate to me? So if you can, first of all, talk to your audience rather than thinking about yourself and how it fits in with their life. So for example, right now I am organising some networking events. So instead of just saying, come to my networking event, it's going to be really good, I'm putting myself in my potential client's situation. So it could be, are you new to the area? Are you wanting to make new business connections but hate the traditional 60-second pitch, hate being inside and really stuffy networking events? How about this instead? networking outside while you're walking in the fresh air. You're walking side by side, so it's less confrontational, surrounded by beautiful countryside, beautiful parkland. You get a hot drink, a breakfast bap, and some stories and tips about how to write copywriting. Tickets are £20 and book here. Can you see how that's a lot more engaging?
Yes. Now,
buy a ticket.
Definitely, you've gone from transactional activities, which I may or may not be intrigued or interested in, to now building a picture in my mind of, wow, wouldn't it be nice to be walking down a street or a field with, everything that you just described, with a drink in my hand, etc. So it's creating an image in my head, which now I want to become a reality, and therefore I'm probably more likely to go and buy your products as a result. So
yeah. So there's a really simple copywriting structure that's really powerful, which is problem, agitate, solutions. So you put if you're talking about organizational change, then it could be something like, are you having to make redundancies in the next 12 months, but you're really struggling to work out how to tell your workforce or implement these changes in your organization. If you don't do it right, it can really damage your morale amongst the rest of your staff, or it could lead to, I don't know the ins and outs, Cliff, but it could lead to litigation, it could lead to this, that and the other. But don't worry, this is what I do every day of the week. I have 10 years experience working with different organizations, helping them to manage complex change in their organization. I do this by X, Y, and Z. If this sounds interesting to you, get in touch with me, and then we can have a discovery call.
Fantastic. And go carry on.
I was just about to say, by setting that scene to start with, it makes so much more sense than me just saying, or you just saying, oh, I'm an organizational change management consultant. I've completely butchered your title, Cliff, but me saying I'm a copywriter, so many people say to me, oh, does that mean you do things about film copyright or music copyright? And I go, no, the writing time. But if I say I write website copy and I develop messaging strategies so that if you go to a networking event, people understand what you do, the value you provide, so that you attract more of the right kind of customers and they buy more from you. That's so much easier than just a title.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've had the problem of, in the past, of just talking about titles, and it becomes meaningless in this day and age because there's so many titles and it evolves, right? So I think you're dead right. Talk about what you do and who you do it for, and that brings it to life more. I'm also thinking about internal. So you've got these whole internal organizations and businesses who have to give updates to senior members of staff, or just colleagues as well, general colleagues too, which is equally as important. Convincing people to do things is challenging. Bringing people along on a journey to move to a new state of, this is a new world that we need to enter because we've got to change things for the better, whether it's a new technology that we need to adopt or something like that, just new ways of doing business. All those things are really hard to do. And one of the challenges I find is that being able to tell that story around why it's important, continue to engage with them and work with them, it's a fine art. And I think copywriting skills are really important for that, but it's one of those skills that not a lot of people get taught, and we don't really just get taught it. But it's more and more important now because I think people's attention spans are just so short, and therefore you need to grab their attentions. And that's why I just thought it'd be really good to sort of nick some ideas from you, steal some ideas from you, because it's so transferable in many walks of life. So it's really good to hear that from you. But that's everything you were saying. I was thinking about those scenarios and how I could apply those inside organizations as well.
And Cliff, different things work on different people because there's 4 different types of decision makers. So you've got your fast and your slow decision makers, and then you've got your logical decision makers versus your emotional decision makers. So some are fast and logical, some are fast and emotional, some are slow and methodical, logical, and then you've got your slow emotional ones. So there's so many different types, but I think your logical people are going to be more into the numbers, into the stats, like the percentage changes of what you're bringing in is going to increase sales by X amount or bring in X amount of revenue or impacts with like numerical data. But then with the emotional decision makers, it's with the fast ones, it's like, it's got to sound really exciting and everybody else is doing it. So, wow, you're going to be like the talk of the town, versus the slow decision makers, which I think I am. I like to read the case studies, the human stories. How is it going to make people's lives better? If you've got a little testimonial or a case study with pictures of people, then basically I'm sold. But yeah, so having to cater to all these different types of people, it can be challenging. And I think if you can focus on the majority of people who you're speaking to, rather than trying to speak to everybody, it's going to be a lot more powerful. So if you know who the key person to convince is, first and foremost, write for them, and then kind of add in little bits here and there. Or if you've got time, do different approaches for the key different people, because writing for one person, you can really tailor it compared to generalization, which it's just white noise, which is what you get a lot with ChatGPT when people just put in prompts.
Yeah. Do you tend to work with things like personas, where you look at, okay, who's my ideal client, or who's my ideal audience, or who are my select 3 or 4 types of people, so that to help you to channel the way that you could communicate to them and address their needs? Is that something that you often work with as well?
So personas to a point, but with my clients, what I normally do is I ask them to pick 5 of their favorite clients that they want to continue working with in the future, and I'll interview them. I'll find out why they have, what drew them to working with my client in the first place. So, for example, a psychologist I worked with recently, I wasn't able to interview her clients one-to-one because confidentiality, but she was able to send out some surveys. So she got the results back. So I was able to look at what was going on in the person's life, which drew them to needing their help in the first place. Then why did they choose the psychologist above any others? And then as a result of the work that they've done together, what has been the biggest impact and change on their life. So by looking at these transcripts, and usually I do the interview myself because then I can probe and go in a bit more detail. I'm able to understand what are the trigger points, what are the pushes and the pulls. Because there's always a moment where something becomes unbearable to different extents, where I think people think, oh, I can't bear this anymore. So for me, I've had professional photos done recently because I could not bear looking in my folder and having to send out an old photo which I'd been using over and over again, and it didn't look like me anymore, and it was just one. So I thought, right, I need to do something about this. So if I was a photographer with this in mind, I could use that as a headline. Are you sick of sending out the same old photo from 10 years ago, which doesn't look like you anymore? Let's get some new shots. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that speaks to me. So yeah, by speaking to the kinds of clients that you want more of, and understanding their struggles, what they wanted to achieve from working with you, and the impacts that the person has had, I can turn that into really compelling copy, which is authentic and real because it's based on real life experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And what channels do your clients tend to use? What do you think works best for different types of industries or types of people in terms of communications?
It's really a mix, and it really depends on the different types of businesses. And I think sometimes you just have to test things out. So for some businesses, social media is great. So, but choosing the right platform. So for me, I really like using LinkedIn. I don't want to spread myself too thinly, but I'm also conscious of social media. It's kind of rented space. So I want people to go and sign up to my email address so that I can email them directly, because then I can control that so much more than relying on a social media algorithm. I've also got my website. So they all play, it's like a team playing together. So thinking about where do you meet your clients? For me, I meet a lot of people in person. So it's easier for me to say, oh, go check out my social media. If you like what you see, then sign up to my email list, because not everybody is going to be ready for copywriting straight away. You can come to some of my events to get to know me better as well, get my emails, and then when you're ready, if you need copy, then we can organise a discovery call. But because they've been in that kind of environment of getting to know me through these different methods, it's going to be so much warmer than if somebody just found me by searching SEO or pay-per-click ads. That there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely not at all, but it needs to be targeted to people who, the copy on your website, if you're relying on SEO and pay-per-click, you need to do more of a job of nurturing them to straight away of this is why we are different to other competitors, because the people are looking for your services, but you need to really communicate quickly why you're different from others.
It just reminds me of the importance of personal identity and, I guess, quote unquote, personal brand, right? So how important is it now for individuals and I guess their organizations as well, to have that real clear identity and personal brand? And I think about individuals as well, probably more so because, I work with lots of individual people, or team players, etc., and things like personal branding and how they present themselves and how they come across within the bubble and beyond the core bubble, they're potentially not prioritized enough. I find I've been like that for a long time, whereas my priority has always been get the job done, do it great, do it well, bring people on the journey. But then what mark have I left? And what would people think of me in terms of who am I about? And I couldn't always identify what people would think of me if they were to pinpoint who am I as an individual, as a brand, so to speak. But I'm quite interested to hear how important is personal branding from your perspective.
I think personal branding is really important, and relationships as well, because AI means that it's easier than ever to create content. And if you go on LinkedIn, there's so many different people. I think I read a stat the other day, like 1.2 billion pieces of content are being produced every day, something like that. So if everything is generic, and I use AI and I think it's great for scaling, but you need to have those foundational pieces of your personal brand in place first and foremost. And I think it can be difficult to say, oh, well, what is my personal brand? And say, go on, tell me. I think it's more like, what is important to you? What are your experiences? And I think it can be easier to look back and reflect on your career and say, what was the through line of my work? So what kind of organizations have I worked with? What did I love doing? What do I like to do in my spare time? or how do I prefer to communicate? Do I prefer speaking, or do I prefer to do things on Zoom or in person? If I'm choosing a charity, which charity do I go to? Which events do I go and attend? So I think by looking at all these different things, all of these little pieces build up into a bigger brand. It's your personality. I think people get fixated on the word brand, but really it's just different elements of your personality working together in a business sense.
Oh, you've kind of given me a new outlook now. I might actually ditch the term personal brand and actually replace it with personality, because it's the personality that makes you stand out, right? And yeah, that's really good. Good takeaway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think people get really stuck on the words and the phrases, a bit like the professions. It's like, so what does a copywriter do? What's a personal brand? But if you strip it away and think it's the thing that makes you unique, there's only one Cliff, there's only one me. So I think it's really just sitting down with a notepad or a digital. I like to voice record things as well. You could do a little, set up your phone and interview yourself. Then just find out what has been your favourite moments of your career, what have been your highlights, how many years have you been doing this, that and the other. So getting a few numerical stats. So for me, I worked in PR for 8 years. I've been working in various communication roles for 15 years. I'm 41. I've got all these different numbers. Then how many different clients have you worked with? So you've got your numbers, but then again, looking at the different types of events. If I said, Cliff, do you fancy going to a networking event? There's so many different types of networking event. If somebody said to me, do you want to join BNI, which is a really structured networking event if you hadn't been before? For me, I say, thanks for the invitation. I like to go to them maybe once or twice a year. I'm not going to join, but I'll go as a one-off. I prefer going to more informal events. I went to an event at a casino recently, at a football ground, go to one in the theatre. I organise dining experiences. So for me, the more social events are more to my taste. So that also is part of my, I suppose, brand, because when I'm posting on LinkedIn, you've got all these photos of me at different styles of events, as opposed to just sitting at a desk with a notebook. They all play a different part. And I think if you're looking at 3 different accountants, each one is going to be different in different ways. It's finding out. The personality is often in the details. So who do they work with? It's personality at the end of the day, Cliff. Personality.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you know what? I was expecting, probably with a bit of trepidation, that you'd be asking me a bunch of questions. So I'm glad you haven't, which is great. But I'm going to give you a chance to ask me a question before we wrap up, if you want to.
Cool. I would love to. So I'm really keen to find out about people's favourite parts of their jobs or their favourite project that they've ever worked on, and what did you learn from it?
It's a really good question, actually. So I would just say one of the outcomes that I enjoyed seeing was one which involved a lot of changes to systems, but those systems were being used by many, many people. And I won't say it's sort of the industry or the company, but it was just amazing. And there's more than one instances of this in different sort of initiatives. But where I enjoyed it the most was where I got to see people doing things differently as a result of the changes that we implemented. having new ways of working and enjoying those new ways of working, and seeing how that enabled them to build, to see a career path for themselves, which meant, right, before this project, program, whatever, I had a specific role, and this is how I served my customers. And since then, now I have streamlined how I think about my role, and have a greater visibility of what the path is for my career path. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that on more than one occasion as part of the team, and the outcome of that was amazing, because it just made me realize that we were changing colleagues' lives for the better and giving them a bit of something to get out of bed for, which was great, and serve their customers too. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. So it's a good question, because it's made me think what gets me out of bed in terms of the outcomes that I want to see happen to keep spurring me on.
Thank you. No, but hearing that you've made a difference to people and you've given them a clear career path, it's like, that's a headline in itself. Be happy in your
Definitely. Now, I will then give you a chance to, of all the great things we've talked about, do you have one final message for anyone listening or about to listen to this podcast that you would like them to take away, all about copywriting, public speaking, and anything that's really close to you?
I would say, if you're nervous about it, give it a go anyway, because this is a starting point. You're going to get better. So get out there. The more you do, the more you talk, the more you write, you're going to develop your own way of thinking. You're going to develop your ideas. But if it's just in your head, then it's you can't edit something that's in your head. You need to get it out into the world, and then you can keep working on it. So yeah, just do it.
Very sound advice. Of course, there's no copyright issues in what you've said at all whatsoever. But yeah, amazing. It's been a real pleasure, Charlotte, speaking to you. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cliff. It's been a pleasure.